She didn't need a miracle. She didn't need a hero. She didn't even need someone to stay. She just needed her car fixed. But sometimes the smallest problems are placed in your life for one reason: to introduce you to the person who will quietly change everything. Before we continue, take a moment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel, and tonight's story has already crossed more borders than anyone expected. Claire Donovan had handled pressure her entire adult life. Deadlines, budgets, people counting on her decisions. At 32, she was the youngest senior project manager at one of the largest urban development firms in the region, a title she'd worked 10 relentless years to earn. Her calendar was color-coded like a battlefield. Her phone buzzed more than it slept, and compliments usually came packaged with expectations that weighed heavier than criticism. That evening, she was still at the office long after most of the lights in the glass tower had gone dark. Rain streaked down the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the city into a watercolor of headlights and neon signs. Claire stood alone in the conference room, arms crossed, staring at a massive digital rendering projected on the wall. Market Row Redevelopment Project. Her project. Her responsibility. Her potential career-making success or career-ending failure. She rubbed her temples and checked the time. 2:22 a.m. She should have left an hour ago, maybe 2. But the presentation scheduled for the next morning wouldn't refine itself, and the investors flying in from out of state weren't known for patience or second chances. Her phone vibrated again. Another email. Claire exhaled slowly, the kind of breath people take when they're trying not to scream. Just one more tweak, she muttered to herself. That's what she always said. Claire used to love what she did, back when success felt like progress instead of survival. But lately, work had swallowed everything else. Friends drifted, weekends disappeared, even sleep felt optional. She told herself it was temporary, that once this project launched, she'd breathe again. That was the lie she lived on. 2:46, she finally shut down her laptop and slipped on her coat. The office was eerily quiet now, her heels echoing through the marble hallway as she headed for the elevator. She didn't notice the exhaustion in her reflection, the dark circles, the tension locked permanently in her shoulders. All she knew was that she needed to get home. The rain had picked up by the time Claire pulled onto the industrial stretch near Market Row. This part of the city was caught between eras: old brick buildings with faded signage, warehouses half repurposed into trendy spaces, others abandoned entirely. During the day, it buzzed with construction crews and delivery trucks. At night, it felt forgotten. Her car made a sound that didn't belong in any manual, a sharp stutter, then another. Claire frowned, easing off the gas. "Don't you dare," she whispered, gripping the steering wheel. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Then silence. The engine died. Her car coasted for a few feet before rolling to an embarrassed stop beneath a flickering streetlight. Claire stared straight ahead. Then she laughed, a short, humorless sound. She checked her phone. 1 bar of signal. Battery at 12%. Of course. She stepped out of the car, rain immediately soaking the shoulders of her coat. The street was empty. No passing traffic, no open businesses, just the hum of distant city noise and the drip of water from rusted fire escapes. Claire popped the hood and stared inside like the answer might magically appear if she looked long enough. It didn't. She leaned against the car and exhaled, rain plastering her hair to her face. This wasn't how her day was supposed to end. Her mind spiraled instantly. What if she didn't make it home tonight? What if the car needed towing? What if she missed the morning meeting? She pulled out her phone and opened a roadside assistance app. Unavailable. Wait time, unknown. She closed the app and stared at the screen as if betrayed. For the first time all day, maybe all week, Claire felt something crack. Not panic, not fear, just tired. That's when she noticed the light, a warm yellow glow bleeding through rain-streaked windows halfway down the block. She squinted. A repair shop. An old one. The sign above it flickered unevenly. Coal, Auto, and Repair. Claire hesitated. She didn't love the idea of walking alone down an empty street at night, especially in heels, especially with no signal. But standing in the rain wasn't improving her situation either. She locked her car, tucked her phone into her pocket, and started walking. Each step echoed louder than it should have. The bell above the shop door jingled as Claire stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around her instantly. Heat, light, and the familiar scent of oil and metal.
The contrast from the cold rain outside was almost shocking. Behind a half-raised hood, a man looked up. Mid to late 30s, dark hair, work jacket streaked with grease. His hands were dirty in the honest way, not careless, just busy. He didn't look surprised to see her, just attentive. "Evening," he said, voice calm. Claire blinked. The simple question caught her off guard. "My car died down the block," she said. He glanced at the clock on the wall, then shrugged. No questions, no skepticism, no visible annoyance, just action. They walked back out into the rain together. He listened as she described the sound the engine made, nodded, asked one clarifying question, then got to work. Claire stood awkwardly nearby, trying not to feel like a burden. "I'm Ethan," he said after a moment, still focused on the engine. No last names. It felt unnecessary. He diagnosed the problem quickly. Something electrical, not catastrophic, but not minor either. "I can get it running enough to get you home," he said. Relief washed over her so suddenly she almost laughed. "That would be amazing," she said. He smiled, not a sales smile, just kind. While he worked, they talked, nothing important. Where she was headed, how long he'd been open, how rain always made cars act dramatic. She noticed how careful he was, not just with the engine, but with her space, never condescending, never invasive. When she asked how much she owed him, he shook his head. "Seriously, He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. That was it. No lecture, no moral speech, just a quiet kindness. Something in her chest tightened. As he closed her hood, Claire glanced back toward the shop. That's when she saw it, a notice taped to the window. She stared at it for half a second longer than she meant to. Ethan followed her gaze. "City stuff," he said casually. Claire nodded, forcing a smile. She didn't say anything. She didn't know why. Her car started on the first try. She thanked him again, genuinely this time. As she pulled away, she checked her mirrors, saw him standing there in the rain, watching to make sure she made it safely onto the road. Claire didn't know it yet, but the man who had just fixed her car, without payment, without recognition, was about to turn her entire world upside down. And the choice she'd soon have to make would shock everyone, including herself. Claire Donovan didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the rain still tapping against her windows, not because of the presentation waiting for her in the morning, but because every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same thing. A flickering shop sign, grease-stained hands, a man standing in the rain, making sure her car didn't stall again. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. Claire was back in her natural habitat. Glass, steel, coffee that cost more than it should. The boardroom on the 26th floor buzzed with quiet authority. Screens glowed with architectural renderings, spreadsheets, and profit projections. Men and women in tailored suits reviewed documents with practiced indifference. Claire sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, expression controlled. This was the version of herself the world knew, not the woman standing alone in the rain 12 hours earlier, hoping a stranger would help. "Let's begin," Marcus Hale said, tapping his pen against the table. Marcus was the firm's senior development director, brilliant, ruthless, and allergic to sentimentality. He believed cities were puzzles meant to be optimized, not preserved. The first slide appeared. Market Row, Phase 1 acquisition. Claire's stomach tightened. The map zoomed in. Claire recognized the street instantly. Her breath caught. The same stretch of road, the same block, the same corner, and there it was, outlined in red. Coal, Auto, and Repair. Her fingers curled slowly against the table. Marcus's voice continued, calm and confident. Phase 1 involves clearing outdated properties to prepare for the mixed commercial expansion. Minimal resistance expected. Small business, single owner. Claire felt heat rise behind her eyes. Single owner. She saw Ethan's face in her mind, the way he'd shrugged off payment, the casual way he'd said, "You looked like you had enough on your plate already." She swallowed. Marcus prompted. Every eye in the room turned to her. She forced a breath. She asked carefully. Marcus blinked, surprised. "Yes," she continued, keeping her tone neutral. A few people exchanged looks. Marcus smiled tightly. "That's accounted for. Compensation packages. Relocation." She almost laughed. Claire nodded slowly, buying time. "Let's move on," she said. But something inside her had already shifted. Back at her desk, Claire stared at the redevelopment documents. She told herself the same thing she told herself 100 times before. This was business. This was growth. This was how cities evolved. But the words felt hollow now. She could still hear Ethan's voice. Calm, unassuming. People like me don't get a say. She didn't know why that thought lodged itself so deep in her chest, but it did. Her phone buzzed. A reminder. 3 days. Claire should have stayed late again. Instead, she found herself driving back toward Market Row. She didn't plan it. Her hands just turned the wheel. The rain had cleared, leaving the pavement slick and reflective. As she parked across the street from the repair shop, she told herself she was just checking logistics. That was the lie. The shop was open. The bay door rolled halfway up. Inside, Ethan was working on a pickup truck. A teenage boy stood nearby, watching intently. Ethan explained something patiently, gesturing toward the engine. Claire watched from her car. This wasn't just a shop. It was a place where knowledge was passed down, where people were taught, not dismissed, where dignity lived quietly. Her chest tightened again. She didn't go inside. Not yet. The next day, Claire made a mistake. She Googled him. Ethan Cole. The search results were sparse. No flashy website, no branding team. Just local business listing, a few community reviews, one short article from years ago. Local mechanic keeps shop open after father's passing. She clicked it, read every word. His father had opened the shop 35 years ago. Ethan had taken it over after college to help care for him. When his father died, Ethan stayed. "This place raised me," the article quoted him saying. Claire closed the tab and leaned back in her chair. Her throat felt tight. For the rest of the day, she avoided thinking about it. She buried herself in numbers, responded to emails, scheduled meetings. She told herself she wasn't responsible for every individual outcome. That was the job. That night, her car hesitated again. Not fully, but enough. Her heart jumped. Without thinking, she turned toward Cole Auto and Repair. Ethan looked up as she walked in. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by a warm smile. "Hey." Claire tried to match his ease. "Car's still acting weird," she said. He got to work immediately. She watched him in silence for a moment. "All my life," he said lightly. "Officially?" He paused, then shrugged. Claire nodded, heart pounding. She wanted to tell him everything. She didn't, not yet. As he finished tightening a bolt, Ethan said casually, "City's changing fast." Claire swallowed. She asked quietly. He glanced up, surprised, then smiled, not bitter, not angry. "Sure," he said, "but I sleep fine at night." That did it. That line cracked something open in her. Claire drove home with her car running smoothly, and her conscience completely broken. 3 days. That's all she had. 3 days to choose between a project that could define her career and a man who'd shown her more humanity in 20 minutes than most people had in years. She didn't know it yet, but whatever choice she made, someone was going to lose everything. There's a moment, quiet, terrifying, unavoidable, when you realize the problem in front of you isn't logistical, it's moral. She knew because she checked the clock 3 times, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. The office hummed with urgency. Phones rang. Assistants moved briskly. Emails arrived faster than anyone could answer them. Friday was looming. Approval day. Claire sat at her desk staring at the same document she'd opened an hour ago. Her name was already typed at the bottom. All that was missing was her signature. One stroke of a pen. One decision. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. And suddenly she wasn't in the office anymore. She was standing in a rain-soaked street, watching a stranger refuse money because he thought she looked tired. Claire had always believed she was a rational person. She weighed options, measured consequences, didn't let feelings interfere. That's how she'd survived this long. But lately, something was different. The people in her spreadsheets had faces now. Ethan's face. His shop wasn't just a red square on a map anymore. It was a place with warmth, with history, with a future that depended on her choice. She opened a new tab on her computer, pulled up the redevelopment blueprints again, looked for alternatives. There weren't any, not officially. By lunchtime, Claire convinced herself she was overthinking. You don't even know him, she told herself. You're projecting meaning onto a moment. People helped each other every day. It didn't mean anything. She closed the documents, grabbed her coat, and headed out for fresh air. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Food trucks lined the street.
Construction cranes loomed overhead. Progress. Claire walked without direction until she found herself back on Market Row, again. She stopped short when she noticed a small crowd gathered near the repair shop. Concern spiked. She crossed the street quickly. A delivery truck had stalled, hazard lights blinking. The driver stood frustrated, phone pressed to his ear. Ethan was already under the hood, tools out, sleeves rolled. No hesitation. Claire watched as he worked efficiently, calmly, explaining something to the driver. The teenage boy from earlier stood nearby, handing him tools. A rhythm, a system, a place that mattered. When the truck started, the driver clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "You just saved my day," the man said. Ethan smiled. Claire felt something twist painfully in her chest. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Hey," she said softly. Ethan looked up, surprised. "Claire?" "Yes," she said. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then she gestured to the shop. "You do a lot for people," she said. He shrugged. "People do a lot for me too." She nodded, struggling to hold her composure. She asked. They moved inside. The shop felt quieter now, safer. Claire leaned against a workbench, hands clasped tightly. "There's something I should probably tell you," she began. Ethan waited patiently. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it reflexively. "Marcus Hale. Need confirmation today. Board is asking questions." The moment slipped away. She swallowed. "Never mind," she said quietly. Ethan studied her for a second, then nodded.
This time her expression was different, resolved. He asked. "No," she said honestly. He set his tools down. Claire took a breath. "My name is Claire Donovan," she said. His brow furrowed slightly. Silence. The air changed instantly. Ethan didn't move. Claire rushed on, words tumbling out. "I didn't know it was your shop, I swear, and when I found out, I tried to—" He held up a hand gently. She stopped. His voice wasn't angry. It was steady. "So," he said quietly. Claire nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. Another pause. Then Ethan leaned back against the workbench, exhaled slowly. "I figured you were important," he said. That broke her. Tears spilled before she could stop them. "I don't want to take this from you," she said. Ethan studied her face, saw the fear, the guilt, the sincerity. Finally, he nodded. "I appreciate you telling me," he said. She blinked. He smiled sadly. Claire left the shop with her heart in pieces. She drove back to the office, sat in her chair, and stared at the folder on her desk. 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Marcus stood in the doorway. "Do you think it's right?" he asked. Claire looked up. "No," she said. He frowned. She took a breath. Marcus crossed his arms. She met his gaze. The clock ticked louder. The board waited. And somewhere across the city, a small repair shop held its breath, without even knowing it. There are moments in life when turning back becomes impossible, not because the path behind you disappears, but because the person you were no longer fits there. 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You repeated slowly, like he was testing a faulty idea aloud. "Claire, we've spent 18 months planning this. Investors are in position. The city has signed off." "One business," Claire corrected quietly. Marcus scoffed. "That's the problem," she said. The board members on the screen shifted uncomfortably. A few glanced at the clock. Others stared at Claire with open disbelief. "You're letting emotions interfere," Marcus said. Claire felt the sting, but didn't flinch. "I'm letting responsibility interfere," she replied. Marcus leaned forward. "If you don't sign this today, the board will assume you can't handle pressure," he said. "You'll lose the project." Silence filled the room.
Claire looked at the document. The signature line waited patiently. She thought about Ethan's shop, the warmth, the history.
The way he helped without being asked. Then she thought about the younger version of herself, working late nights, believing success would someday feel like safety. She picked up the pen and set it down. "I'm not signing," she said. Gasps followed. One board member muted his microphone. Another leaned back, stunned. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. She shook her head. "No," she said. She slid a second folder across the table. Marcus hesitated, then opened it. The room grew quiet. Claire spoke carefully, methodically, like the professional she was. Slides appeared. Designs changed. The repair shop remains, renovated, modernized, incorporated into the ground level. One board member leaned closer to the screen. Marcus frowned. "Which makes it valuable," Claire said. "We preserve community trust. We gain sustainability credits." She paused. Murmurs spread. "This adds cost," Marcus argued. "It also adds longevity," Claire countered. "Actually," she said calmly, "it does." A few board members exchanged glances. One spoke up. "Already reviewed," Claire said. "He becomes a stakeholder," Claire replied. Across town, Ethan locked up his shop early. He didn't know why, but his chest felt heavy. He'd seen the look in Claire's eyes earlier, the fear, the honesty. He trusted her, which scared him more than if he hadn't. Back in the boardroom, the silence stretched. Finally, the board chair spoke. "This is risky," she said. Marcus stared at Claire. Claire nodded. The chair topped her pen. "Proceed," she said. Claire's heart pounded. Claire exhaled. The meeting ended. People filtered out. Marcus lingered. "You better be right," he said quietly. Claire met his gaze. That evening, Claire returned to the repair shop. Ethan looked up. She smiled, nervous, hopeful. "They didn't demolish," she said. He froze. She nodded. "Your shop stays." For the first time since she'd met him, Ethan looked stunned. She shook her head. His voice cracked. They stood there, two people from different worlds, finally on the same ground. Not savior and saved. Partners. Construction began weeks later. The shop stayed open during renovations. Local news picked up the story. People stopped by to thank Ethan. Claire visited often, sometimes to talk business, sometimes just to listen. Their connection deepened slowly, naturally. Claire nodded. He looked at her. She met his gaze.
But neither of them knew yet. The hardest part was still ahead. Change doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up quietly, one small decision at a time, until suddenly, everything looks different. 6 months passed faster than either Claire or Ethan expected, and somehow, the world didn't end. Market Row reopened on a crisp autumn morning. The once forgotten block now buzzed with life. Above street level, glass and steel reflected the skyline, modern, sleek, unmistakably ambitious. But on the ground floor, something remained grounded. Cole Auto and Repair, Est 1989. The sign had been restored, not replaced. Inside, the shop was updated but familiar. Same workbenches, same oil-stained floor, same honesty in the air. Claire stood just inside the doorway, watching as customers moved between the garage and the retail spaces above. People lingered, talked, laughed. It worked. Not just financially, humanly. The media loved it. Investors followed. So did cities from across the country. Claire's firm didn't just survive, it thrived. And for the first time in her career, success didn't feel hollow. That evening, after the crowd cleared, Claire and Ethan stood outside the shop. The city lights flickered on around them. Claire turned to him. She swallowed. "I was terrified," she admitted. He smiled softly. She smiled back. Romantic resolution, earned, not rushed. Their relationship didn't explode into something dramatic. It grew. Slow mornings, shared dinners, conversations that mattered. Trust built where fear once lived. One night, standing beneath the restored Market Row lights, Ethan took Claire's hands. "You didn't just fix my shop," he said. Her eyes filled. "And you reminded me why I started," she replied.
He reached into his jacket pocket. Claire froze. I'm not great at speeches, Ethan said, nervous now. He opened the box. The ring was simple, honest, just like him. Yes, Claire whispered before he could even finish. The engagement made the news, not because of wealth or status, but because of the story behind it. A mechanic, a developer, a broken car, a preserved dream. The wedding was small, held right there on Market Row. The shop doors were open, lights strung overhead. The city hummed around them. Claire walked down the aisle smiling, not the polished smile she used for meetings, but a real one, the kind she'd almost forgotten how to wear.
As they danced under the lights, Claire laughed. You know, she said, if my car hadn't broken down. Ethan grinned. She shook her head. He kissed her forehead. This wasn't a story about fixing a car. It was a story about seeing people, about choosing integrity when it's inconvenient, about realizing that success doesn't mean standing above others, it means standing with them. Claire didn't lose her career, Ethan didn't lose his livelihood, and a city didn't lose its soul. Because one woman chose courage over convenience, and one man chose kindness without expecting anything in return. Maybe you're watching this right now, dealing with a problem that feels small but heavy, a choice that feels impossible, a moment where doing the right thing seems risky. Let this be your reminder. Sometimes the thing you think is breaking your life is actually redirecting it. If this story reminded you that integrity still matters, that kindness has ripple effects, and that love often shows up disguised as inconvenience, tap subscribe. Because the best stories aren't about perfection. They're about people who choose better. And sometimes they start with a broken car on a quiet street.